What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hawks from Room podcast. Two back-to-back wins against teams the Hawks have traditionally struggled against in situations where they probably would have lost in prior seasons. So, 110 to 120 victory over the Miami Heat. This was, as all games against the Heat are, very physical. Trey did not have a great game scoring the ball, 3 of 13 from the field. Had a very great start to the game in terms of his playmaking, was really picking and choosing his spots. Ended up with 7 assists in the first half. He now has 4 games this season where he had at least 7 assists in a quarter. Nobody else has more than 2, and barely anyone has 2. I think it's just Tyrese Halliburton, LeBron, maybe, and some other guys. So yes, he's unparalleled as a playmaker, and I thought he was really picking apart Miami's defense, really for the majority of all night. Just his own shot was typically not falling. Now, we do know Miami tends to give him some issues. The physicality was absolutely there. There were really more than that, probably about 5 or 6 situations where he was fouled, and it wasn't called. And to the credit for the Hawks in general, they were able to play through that whistle. Miami is allowed to play a little bit more physical than other teams, and so they were up to the challenge. Quinn talked about it in the presser as well. It's just, you can't control that, so you can't use it as a crutch or like a reason to not play well. You have to be able to respond to that adversity. Now, a very interesting thing for last night's game, the Hawks now have 3 players averaging 20-plus points per game. The last time the Atlanta Hawks had 3 players averaging 20-plus, they weren't even the Atlanta Hawks. It was back in St. Louis in 1962. That was the most recent season. You had Bob Pettit, Cliff Hagan, and Clyde Levelett. So some unparalleled territory for the Hawks, especially if we just consider the Trae Young era, we have not seen this level of consistent scoring next to him. Of course, DeJounte Murray and John Collins were somewhat close to replicating this impact, but with the way that DeAndre Hunter's playing, the continued emergence of Jalen Johnson as an all-star contender and candidate, this is a very strong supporting cast around Trae, and that's how you can win games like these where his shot isn't particularly falling. Some DeAndre Hunter praise before we get into the film. He's currently averaging 20 points per game on about 68% true shooting. He is about 6 to 7 points above league average. So his relative true shooting is well above what most players averaging that volume of points. So he's upped his scoring volume, right? Taking a huge leap as a scorer, but he's maintained and even improved drastically his efficiency. Like, that's not easy to do by any means. To give you a glimpse of what that looks like, right? He's now averaging 24 points per 75 possessions. Last season, he was at 19.6, so a 5 point per 75 possession jump. He has a relative true shooting percentage of about 7. That puts him in the company of players averaging 24 points per 75 on 6+ relative true shooting percentage. There's only 3 players. Kevin Durant, obviously great company, and Norman Powell, DeAndre Hunter. Those are the 3 guys. Norman Powell is having a great season. He's always been a good scorer. He has more opportunity, and he's able to maintain his efficiency as well. So I think a good lesson here about the value of roles. So for DeAndre Hunter, he's no longer guarding the best player. He's a more simplistic shot diet. He has the highest percentage of his buckets coming off assists, as we talked about on the podcast in the past. And I think he's just being way more decisive. He's not dribbling himself into bad situations. He's also one of the best handoff scorers in the NBA this season. He's currently at pulling up real quick. He is currently scoring at the 5th highest points over expectation in the NBA this season. He's scoring 1.47 points per possession on handoffs, and that is in the 99th percentile in points per possession. So his efficiency is off the charts, and then he's in the 88th percentile in possessions per game. So he's been very, very good. In transition, he's also 11th in points over expectation. So in these simplistic ways to score, he's absolutely excelled. And I think a lot of that credit is to Quinn Snyder by putting him in that role, but Dyson Daniels as well for taking those defensive matchups and really unlocking him as an offensive player, which is where his role probably has always been best optimized. We just had to use him as a defender. Very, very excited for DeAndre Hunter. And without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the film. The thing that really stood out to me for this game, I was very fixated on trying to figure out how the Hawks are going to defend Tyler Hero without Dyson Daniels. And the reason why that was such a concern is that Tyler Hero has been one of the best pick and roll players in the NBA. He's in the 80th percentile in terms of efficiency and somewhere around like the 90th or 95th percentile in terms of actual volume. And that's problematic, of course, because you don't have your best player to defend him, which is, of course, Dyson Daniels, right? And so what we saw from the Hawks is that they really did not want him to have the ball in his hands as a scorer. So they were very aggressive, bringing help, and that's on his drives. It was on pick and rolls. They mixed in some blitzes, some switches. So here he gets downhill off the rejecting the screen. You see Capella's already at the level of the screen if he did get over. And as he gets downhill, Trey's shrinking the floor. And essentially the Hawks wanted to funnel these shots to Haywood Highsmith or Jaime Jaquez or Bam Adebayo and try to deny Duncan Robinson as many three-point attempts as possible and force these kickouts and not let Hero beat them with their scoring. If he was going to beat them, it'd have to be with his passing. And I think that's the right type of read. He did end up with 7 or 8 assists, I believe. Let me double check. Yeah. 10 assists. So he had 28, 7, and 10. A good game, but he took just 15 shots. And he just made 8 of them. He got to the free throw line. And a lot of the shots that he made were not necessarily breakdowns. And so the game plan, again, was making him a passer. And so to his credit, he was able to make passes like these. But the Hawks will live with Haywood Highsmith beating them from 3. What they want to do is show us Duncan Robinson as well, road him off, make him pick the ball up, and then make Tyler Hero try and score in these isolation situations, and then just have a lot of pressure on him, regardless, because he is a very gifted and crafty scorer, but he doesn't have a super tight handle, and he's not super athletic in terms of his burst. So Trey was able to take advantage of that and take it from him here, and the Hawks were able to get out in transition. And he was able to make some decent reads here. This is actually on Trey, I believe. So again, they're showing 2 on the ball, but you got to get back, and then so no one's in position to get to him. But again, like you'll see, just in the rare occasions that they did not have him or have someone at the level of the screen, he was able to get free. That was a good shot over Keaton Wallace. Then again, some of the foul bait and stuff. Here he gets Keaton in the air, jumps into him. But for the most part, he was not able to get to easy offensive looks. Here's good hands from Rizachet that knocks that away, and he loses the ball. Again, so they're just great timing on the swipe down. The foul baiting was kind of it's pretty frustrating, honestly. The Hawks want to keep them out transition as much as they can. The Heat are the 11th best offense in the NBA, but in the half court, they're not nearly as good. So you can see these situations where the Hawks defense wasn't set. They were able to get these shots from Tyler Hero getting downhill. Again, you can see that in these off-ball scenarios, they sort of left him alone. But when they brought the screen, they're going to try and bring help as much as they can, especially for someone like Garrison Matthews. And then, Tyler Hero has really improved as a scorer, so he's going to hit some of these shots. Here again, Larry Nance is in position, gets rejected. He smokes a layup. And the reason why he was such an important factor to key in on is because with Jimmy Butler off the floor, there's really not a lot of guys who can create their own shot for this Heat team. Terry Rozier tries. He's not very good at it. And so anytime he takes shots, I was like, yeah, we'll live with that. But even when you look at their starting group, Duncan Robinson, who's improved a lot as a pick and roll ball handler, hitting guys on a short roll. Jaime Jaquez, Bam, and Haywood Highsmith are very reliant on Hero's ability to create and score. But it starts with his scoring, not his playmaking, because again, he's not that great of a playmaker. And so they want to minimize the amount of opportunities he has to get in rhythm because he is their most consistent scorer. So that means running him off the line. It means bringing 2 when he does get a pick and roll and trying to keep him out the middle as much as he can. And I thought in general, without Dyson, this is pretty good defensive activity from the Hawks. Vee doesn't just give up on this. He nearly gets a hand on this and might have even disrupted it. And then, so I think there's an argument to be made that there's a level of defensive intensity and attention to detail that I think Dyson has brought to this team, even when he's not on the floor. And you can really see that in games when he's not there. I think Vee was able to replicate some of that defensive pressure as much as he can. But again, you just got to minimize a team that doesn't have the half-court creators getting out in transition. And in transition, the Heat scored pretty well. In the half-court, they were just 41%, took 70 attempts, and they made 29 of them. The Hawks, for comparison, made 35 of their 68, so they're at 51.5%. But the Heat they outscored them on the fast break, and they also outscored them in points off turnovers. And so even though the Hawks only had 13, the Heat had 17 points off those turnovers. So, of course, you want to minimize those as much as possible. But I thought in general they were able to do a good job at keeping them in the half court. When you look at their percentage of possessions in the half court, about 76% of their plays were in the half court, which is pretty good. Hawks held them to under a point per possession in the half court, which is phenomenal. And then they only got them out in transition about 18% of their plays. So really good process from the Hawks defensively. Again, when you're dealing with a gifted scorer, sometimes they're just going to be able to create out of these situations. And I thought this is a nice move from him. And again, he's much improved as a pick and roll operator and drawing contact and just being a more impactful offensive player. So, he is going to have a good game, especially when you don't have someone like Dyson who can key in on him. And I thought, some of these shots, you're going to be okay with that. Now when you do bring two or you have your big at the level of the screen, it doesn't open you up to the short roll. In general, I thought the Hawks were pretty good at showing help on these scenarios. Like I like Zach being here, keeping his hands high. Looks like he almost got his hand on the ball. But this is good help. Good shot from Khalil Ware. And they're going to trust guys to rotate on the back end because, again, like this Heat team isn't super big. So you can live with guys somewhat trying to score on you in the paint where the Hawks, without Onyeka or without Clint on the floor, don't have the same size that they typically have. But with Jalen Johnson on the weak side, even Reza Shea at 6'10", they can bother these guys. You'll live with that. Again, this is the whole point of bringing two. You want to keep them out of the middle, force them to the baseline. Drake comes over, and they're still trailing. Then he peels off, and then you see Jaylen pick it up and wall him off from the paint. He ends up taking a tough fadeaway two over a contest. He makes it, but he's not going to be able to do that consistently. Again, you can see them showing two. I thought Larry Nance did a really good job at keeping the pressure up while he was. It's, again, because you can live with him guarding Hero in space because Hero's not a guy who's going to really get downhill against you like that. He's not super fast. He's not super athletic. He doesn't have a twitchy handle. So you can have Larry switch on to him for certain possessions. We'll look at some of those in particular. Here's just a bit of a miscommunication. Dre sinks a little bit too much, and then Larry Nance wants to come back and recover, and so it's just a little bit too much space. The other reason why they can be this aggressive against the Heat is that Bam is not a very consistent scorer in these situations. Good fight from Garrison, but if Bam would do this more consistently, then you can't really blitz him as much because he is a strong guy. But if this is a Jalen Johnson or if this is Larry Nance or a Clint Capella, it's just a lower percentage shot, and he also sometimes will opt for these fadeaways as opposed to that post-up that he does right there. And so I thought they were able to here's a good example. So here's is this an inbound? No, so this is a trap. So Trey and Larry Nance were very aggressive here. They forced the ball out, and Bam turns, has a power forward on him, and opts for a mid-range jumper, which he just really does not shoot a high percentage on. And so when he can't take advantage of this sort of mismatch, because again Jaylen can battle with him, but it's not a true center on him, then it makes it a lot easier to shrink the floor against everyone else because then the Heat don't have those type of capable shooters that could really burn you in these situations. At this point, the game was over, but you still see the commitment to getting the ball out of Hero's hands. Trey helps over early, and then the ball is sprayed out. I want to point out some particular defensive possessions that stood out to me. I thought when I asked during the presser, I want to ask Quinn, like, how do guys get more comfortable? And or like, what do you attribute the comfortability in, like, toggling these pick and roll coverages? So we talked about in the last pod, against the Bulls, like they started off and dropped a little bit. And then they played more at the level when it became clear that Levine was killing the drop, and they were able to leverage the fact that he doesn't have a super tight handle. And so I think that's, and Quinn said that, when you play a team like the Heat, they're going to make you guard multiple actions. Like you had to guard the first, second, and third action. So he just thinks the attention to detail has really been there for them this year. And so that's why you can see them sort of oscillate between these coverages where they didn't have that comfortability in past years. And then, of course, now they have the personnel to do it as well. And so it's good to see them be able to defend in multiple ways and not just have to rely on a drop coverage or, being only able to respond to offensive tendencies in one way. Because typically they would not bring that many guys on the ball, especially if Dyson's on the floor. But with him off the floor, how can you defend without your best defender? And so I thought that was really, really good from them. So I think, so in the first quarter, there was really interesting. Let's see, I think it was about with a minute left. Let's see. Okay. Oh, wrong button. So here's a good example of the Hawks remaining connected even after there's been some rotations. So you can see some of the matchup, or I guess mismatches, or just results of them being rotations. So you see Larry Nance is out here on the perimeter. Jalen Johnson has tagged Bam. When his ball gets sprayed out, DeAndre Hunter is active here. And so he sees that there's going to be a window here for Bam to get the ball, and he sort of just knocks it away. Hawks are able to get out in transition. So I thought they were very, very connected. And that's not always the truth for this Hawks team. Yes, they are improved defensively. But, like any team, they can be prone to miscommunications. And tonight, you just don't have the luxury of doing that without your best defenders. So I thought they did a really good job of remaining on the same page with one another. Let's take a look at some second quarter stuff. I really liked this X out here. All right, that's the next possession. Yeah, this one right here. So here you have Rozier. Looks like he has a step on Gary. Rizachet slides over. And then as soon as he realizes that Larry's going to pick up his man, he books it to Alec Burks. And he's able to rush him a little bit. Ends up going in and out. So I think this is just really good awareness from Rizachet. He wants to protect the rim for Garrison. And then he doesn't make the mistake of, he can trust Larry to get over there, and then he can go there and pick up who Larry was assigned to. So I thought, again, very good connected play here from the Hawks. Now, when you do have two on the ball, that can cause some issues, right? So if we look at this play right here. So when you do put two on the ball, so the next play is a little bit further. Here it is. Okay. So here the Hawks fly to the ball against Duncan Robinson. Again, he's a huge threat from three, of course. He's improved as a short roll passer. So now when you do have these two on the ball, Jaylen and Trey are exchanging. So this is what Quinn is talking about in terms of guarding multiple actions like this. There's not something super complicated happening here, but because Trey and Jaylen are occupied exchanging their matchups here, he's not in position to get over there and meet Bam on the short roll. And that's a shot that Bam can hit. And so this is smart movement here from Jaime and or from Haywood Highsmith, which again occupies Jaylen just for a little bit as this ball gets passed. And so he doesn't have the time to get over there. So just being proactive here. So Trey wants to make sure that he's not the low man. This is good. This is really good defensive process. Obviously, you want to keep Jaylen as close to the basket as you can in these scenarios. So he can tag Bam here. But this is just, again, good offensive sort of wrinkles here from the Heat to keep Jaylen occupied just long enough that he can't meet Bam there. But for the most part, I thought the Hawks were pretty good at making sure they weren't caught out of position. For example, I can even show you where Trey did a really good job as a low man. Obviously, he's super undersized against this, but this is the stuff that would really frustrate me if I was a Heat fan. So here Bam catches it. The only one between him and the basket is Trae Young, but he's immediately looking to pass. And this ends up being Trae gets out of there as soon as he sees the pass, and he's already sprinting. He knows where the ball is going. He knows where the open shot is. He's sprinting, gets a good contest, slaps wrist, and the Hawks are able to save points here. Now, Bam decides to put his shoulder in the Trae. Reinforcements are coming. There's not much Trae can do here, but what he can do is make himself a factor by having a presence there making Bam hesitate just long enough to think, okay, maybe the pass is the right play here is to pass it out, and then bust his ass to get out there to Alec Burks. Again, these aren't the plays that we would see the Hawks or Trey making prior to Quinn Snyder joining this coaching staff. So I thought that was a really good example of how they've grown as a defensive unit, and just Trey's commitment on that end as well. I want to highlight some help here from Reza Shea as well. So here he's aggressively helping. They ended up calling. Oh, they didn't call a foul here. But I thought this was good help by him. When he was as a prospect, one of his strengths was weak side rim help. He has long arms. He's 6'10". He can bother guys at the rim. He was able to do it without fouling, even though Alec Burks extends this arm. You can see it right here. Tries to draw contact, but Reza Shea is able to keep himself vertical. The refs realized that it was Alec Brooks who tried to do that, and then the Hawks are out in transition, and they got numbers. Ends up being a foul called on Bam here. Also, Reza Shea was getting saucy, man. Like, I think he had like 2-3 attempts at throwing some no look. He kind of just turned away. Here he just fluidly attacks, draws Bam behind the back, no look, and it's just a little bit off. Like, if this is, let's say it's, if we freeze it here and it actually is right there in the shooting pocket, Dre's probably shooting this, or he's pump faking and driving. Ends up being a foul. So that was some interesting stuff defensively. I want to also touch on something pretty important. When you don't have Dyson Daniels, you don't have Bogdanovich, it's the non-Trae Young, non-Jalen Johnson minutes. Now, typically, the Hawks are going to try and keep one of Trae or one of Jaylen on the floor. This game, they did not do that. So if we look at them, there were – oh, that's the wrong combo. Yeah, so if we look at the minutes where we have Trae Young on, or Jalen Johnson off and Trae Young on, it was only 2 minutes. Sorry, the other way around. When Jalen Johnson was on the floor and Trae Young was off the floor, that only happened for 2 minutes. Typically, that's the bulk of the bench minutes that Trae's not playing. So I think Trae played 36 minutes last night. And if you look at the minutes where Trae was on and Jalen was off, it was only about 3 minutes. So that's not typical. What we saw mainly was we got 9 minutes of Trae Young and Jalen Johnson not being on the floor. And the Hawks are able to survive in these minutes. They were only a -9. Like, you're not going to win most minutes against most teams with your two best players off the floor. They were able to score at a respectable level. They weren't necessarily defending as well in these minutes, of course, without Jalen Johnson on the floor. That's a lot of size off the floor. The best lineup they had in these was when they had Clint Capella out there with the reserves. Larry Nance's minutes weren't as good as the lone big. But the thing is, when you have these minutes, the most important thing is that you do not have any sort of luxury to just like lollygag in the half court, right? So if you have, let's look at the minutes with Hunter, beat on Garrison, Nance, Reza Shea. Yeah, let's look at these. 1 second. Yeah. So if you look at these plays, the biggest thing that the Hawks have to do in these minutes is play with pace, knock down their threes, and try to defend as best as they can. And I thought that these units, one thing I really love about V, and I've talked about this a lot, I think on Twitter, I don't know if I've said it on the pod yet, notice how he's already getting downhill before he catches the ball. This is called stampeding. So it's swinging through on the catch, and especially when you have a weaker defender on you, you can really take advantage of your speed here. Duncan Robinson is assuming this is going to be a handoff. I mean, that's Garrison Matthews. He's a three-point shooter. Why is he cutting to the basket? Veet reads this, gathers, delivers. Kel'el Ware is out of position. And then we get a Garrison Matthews poster? But this is all because of movement. It's because Veet realizes that, okay, they're going to try and overplay the handoff here. Duncan Robinson, he's guarding a shooter. Instinctively, he wants to cut off his handoff. He's out of position. V keeps drawing him, and then it's a poster dunk. And so I think this is the movement they have to play with without Trae on the floor. Again, got to knock down the threes, man. Like, this Heat defense will not respect the reserves for sure. So you can see how Aggressively, Pell Larson is tagging. Keaton Wallace has plenty of space, rises up confidently, knocks it down. And these are big, big shots because this sort of offensive unit doesn't have the creators, to just go to, let's say, okay, Jalen, go get this mismatch, go get a bucket. Trey, let's run pick and roll. Let's create. Let's play out of these improvised sets. They need to be able to hit these shots out of movement consistently if they want to be able to survive in these minutes. If we look at the minutes with just Hunter and Krejci, we should see a little bit more examples of this. So here again, we have, Hunter is just hooping out of his mind right now. But it's simple stuff, right? It's, okay, the Heat are going to try and collapse on Rizachet. This is too much space for me. I know I can knock down. I know I can rise up. I can knock this down. I'm shooting the most threes in my career per 75 possessions right now. I'm going to rise up. I'm 6'8". He's not going to be able to contest me and knock those shots down. Another great thing about Veet is that he plays, again, with pace, and he plays very quickly. He's able to get downhill. So this is a nice move from him. At this point, Bam is trying to guard two players. Fake here. Oh, my goodness. Opens up the lane, and he's able to finish with the scoop shot. Very, very pretty from Veet. Again, like this, with Dyson off the floor, like this unit should defend better than they did. But it doesn't matter how well they defend if they can't score. And so I think their MO is like, okay, how many points can we actually score reliably without our two best players? And, it didn't always look nice. Like, I was complaining on Twitter a little bit. There were some tough moments for sure. Here, for example, Rizachet has a really great idea here. Okay, so Pell Larson denies. Okay, I have this guy on my back. I can drive this. And the window was here, but he just throws it too high. Just a little bit too high. Just a little bit too high. Like, if this is, again, he's kind of throwing a no look. He's not looking. I like the idea. I like the flare. It's just a little bit too high, man. Like, Clint's hand is right here. He's only 6'10", but I think he had 2 or 3 passes like that. But this is the type of stuff they have to do with Trey off the floor. Drive these gaps, be aggressive, keep the defense in rotation. So I thought they did a decent job at that for sure. They got bailed out with a Clint Capella hook shot. We all know that sometimes this isn't the most reliable option. But against a rookie, he's able to sort of pin him under the basket. They put 2 on the ball, make him pay there. The Veet, I think this is when Veet drove. I love the pay. Like, I think in a lot of, just in general, like, there's some frustration about who Veet is, right? Like, so I think a lot of people have imagined him like, okay, this is a backup point guard. He's at his best when he can drive closeouts and he can just sort of be a ball handler, not necessarily a playmaker as a primary guy. But when he's able to push the pace like this and force defenses to foul, I mean, that's just really positive stuff for the Hawks offense. And this, again, they need this so badly in these minutes. There's the dunk. Here's the 3-point shot. Keaton was able to give guys fits at times. He just has great hands. He's very strong. He ties them up. Ime loses it, shoots it over the backboard. I think this ends up being a miss for Rizachet. You know what I'm saying? It's not always going to be pretty, but you got to take the shots that you can. I think Veet missed a couple like that. This was a crazy play from Rozier. I thought that was for sure going to be 2 points. Let's see if I have one more example. Also, this is the play where Nance got hurt, I'm pretty sure. So he's out for tonight. He has a hand injury. I think he got rolled up here. I'm not exactly sure what happened. But after this, he started grabbing his hand a bit. Let's see if I have one more example. Yeah, so this is actually with Jaylen on the floor. But V is just, making himself available. Like, how can I generate a shot for my guy? Great stuff. Let's see what else before we close it out. Let's just talk about Jalen Johnson, man. One thing I really liked that I heard from him in the in the presser he was saying that in the locker room they talk about this thing called RBC. And so what RBC stands for is read before the catch. And what that means is when you catch the ball, right, before you even catch the ball, get your head around and understand the situation that you're in. So here, they put two on the ball against Trey. The ball is coming. And Jalen talked about his progressions. He said it's kind of like progressions like a QB. Like he reads the dunker spot, he reads where the help is, he reads the swing pass, and then he reads the skip pass to the corner. And when he knows that Bam is up at the level of the screen here because they're running double drag, nobody on this Heat team can touch him at the rim. There's just nothing he can do. Nothing Duncan Robinson can do, even though he tries his best and gets put through the rim. And so I think this is the type of awareness that helps him be more decisive in these scenarios, right? And so I really loved hearing that from him. And I think he had an all-star level game. Here he is attacking a mismatch. We've asked him to be more aggressive in these scenarios. Sticks with it. Is able to get the putback. Puts the shoulder down. In transition, he's still a monster. Fights through contact. Boom. Against the zone, he was so good. And when I can't remember exactly which reporter asked him. Someone asked him, like, okay, well, like with the zone, like, what do you think helps you be so effective against it? He said Trae Young as a passer, DeAndre Hunter shooting, Garrison Matthews shooting. And that's absolutely true. I mean, against the zone, you have to spread the defense out, but you also have to get to the middle. You have to have a guy physical enough to punish that weak spot in the zone. And I thought Jalen did a really good job at that. If Tyler Hero was on him, it was a bucket. Nice little physical move, gets to a spot. Let's see if this is another zone thing. I also love how he's learning how to use his three-point gravity and pump fake, boom, ball on the floor. No one's going to be able to stop me by the time I get there. And one. Here we see him against the zone again. He's in the middle. Notice the hesitation from Trey. Boom. Gets guys in the air. Let him get to a softer spot in the zone. Timely back cut from Nance and creates a window for Jaylen to get to the rim. This is just good stuff, man. Like, very good stuff from him against a tough defense to play against. This was a ridiculous pass. This is a one-handed bullet. Catches Jaylen in stride. Again, he's got his head around. He understands what the defense is. He knows he can get into this floater right over the shot blocker. He just has such good touch. Like, this is abnormal, man. He's 6'10", extremely athletic. This is amazing touch. Notice a lot of these floaters. Get off me. Fouls. Here. Foul there. You have both arms. Protects the ball. Gets through it. Great touch. Okay, he's got a mismatch. Wants to pass out of it as much as he can. Not a bad read, but with Clint probably need this a little bit higher, or you need to throw it to where he can lead him to the other side of the basket, but stays available. Again, obviously a monster in transition. This gets right through Bam. Hit some timely threes too, especially I think he hit the dagger, honestly, in the fourth quarter. It's just boom. His shot has been a little bit short. Maybe it's the ankle. So it's good to see him find that rhythm. Then active on the glass, man. Like, nothing's going to be easier than an offensive rebound. And this is the dagger here. Heat bring two. Garrison finds him. All the space in the world. Shoots it confidently. Hawks go up 10 with a minute to go. And that was a kill shot. And I think we're at the point with Jalen Johnson where these all-star conversations, they're a little bit theoretical at some points, but this is without a doubt an all-star level season from him. He's now at 20 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, 1 steal. Every player who's ever averaged that has been an all-star. There are only 3 other players averaging 25 and 10. 20 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. That's Giannis. It's not Nikola Jokic. Yeah, it is Nikola Jokic. And then Domantas Sabonis. Those are the only guys, all all-star caliber guys. And so the all-star campaign is here for Jalen Johnson. And I think We talked a little bit about how Trey struggled, having him as an asset, as a sort of sort of like a change-up pitch, right? So it's not as reliant on Trey's finishing or actual creation for himself. Let's just get into Jalen. Let's have him be physical, which is a little bit more consistent way to score than the type of shot diet that Trey too often relies upon. And so I think that's all that we have today. We do have another game tipping off in about 2 hours. The Hawks are going to be playing Toronto in Toronto. So mind you, we were in the presser. They said DeAndre Hunter was going to come out, and then they said, oh, he actually won't be able to make it because they just got on the bus. So they played that game at 3 p.m., got out around 5:30, 5:45-ish, got on the bus, flew to Toronto, where they're playing a team that hasn't played since Thursday. The injury report, I think Larry Nance is out. Dyson is out as well. Onyeka is questionable. Trey's questionable. I think Bogey's questionable as well. But it's going to be a tough game for this Hawks team because Toronto let up the most points in their history against Memphis. And so Darko, their coach, had a practice that ran 80 minutes over their typical time, and then he had a meeting with his coaches on the floor. So I'm sure we see a pretty vigorous effort from the Raptors tonight. They have a massive rest advantage. Back-to-backs with travel are tough. This team is hurt. With Larry Nance out and, of course, no Cody Zeller as well. We could see some Barlow. Onyeka playing would be huge. This is a Raptors team that is very paint-heavy in terms of their shot diet. They are very bad without Jakob Poeltl. Jakob may not play either. Will be an interesting game, and we'll have a breakdown with a Raptors fan following that game, dropping on all platforms. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please like, comment, subscribe, add the show, tell someone you know about it. Yeah, and then I'll see you later tonight after hopefully another Hawks victory. Y'all be safe.